Alex Garland. You might know him as the director for Civil War, the new A24 movie that just came out. It has the highest budget of an A24 movie so far. But he's also the director of these bad boys. He's worked on a bunch of other projects, written other projects, but today we're just talking about the movies he's directed. Now, before we get fully into the video, I'm gonna spoiler warning, because I'm gonna talk about these movies fully and openly, even the ending. But they'll be segmented, so just don't get spoiled. And subscribe. Anyway, into the video. I went into this movie with some high expectations, coming off of movies like Men, Annihilation, Ex Machina, some really good films. And while this movie did deliver on some of my expectations, it also left me hanging on some of them. First off, I'll say this. The movie is incredible at doing what it set out to do. From the incredibly tense war scenes to the dystopian near post-apocalyptic world that Garland created, the movie accomplished its goal of immersion instantly. I felt like this ruined world was just a part of my everyday life. The dangerous scenarios our main characters put themselves into felt normal. Kirsten Dunst and Wagner Moura did an incredible job at showing their comfortability in such a harsh reality. Kaylee Spaney did an incredible job at showing her uncomfortability but resolve to dive headfirst into an unbelievable occupation. I had a great time exploring this dystopian world on the adventure across states, seeing how other people in this world act, from Jesse Plemons' role of an emotionless sociopath to the hillbilly gas station owners torturing looters. The surrounding humans felt unhuman. Garland did a great job painting the picture of this world and the humans that inhabit it. The environment was destroyed, drone shots over ruined cities with fires and riots and gunshots flying through the air constantly, tanks and mortars, firefights at every corner and crevice of the states. A true civil war. A bad ending that we get to see through the view of the press. This idea of the press slipping themselves into this constant violence and warfare with cameras instead of guns is surreal. It felt like they weren't actually there, like a third-person video game. It felt like they were just holding the cameras, not controlling anybody, more like watching a third-person video game than playing. And this idea is certainly surreal, but it feels like this is the extent of the surrealism in the film. Coming from the other films Alex Garland has directed, it does feel a bit strange there wasn't a surreal, deeper than what we see climax. His other films are filled with these moments that feel so unique and strange, and Civil War just doesn't really have that. In fact, it doesn't even really feel like an A24 movie to me. And that's okay, I was just expecting more. This turned out to really just be a war movie. And it feels wrong to boil it down to just a war movie, but I did expect some crazy shit to happen, and it just didn't. The world Garland created and how the humans acted were surreal, but feasible. That's how I see it. One final note on this movie, something that I did like, is the camera snapshots that broke up the heavy warfare sequences. It felt like we get a moment to breathe. Annihilation feels like the natural next movie to talk about because it's most like Civil War. It's an action thriller, but it bridges the gap between his other movies with more surreal aspects, like the climax, which is definitely the best part of this movie, as climaxes typically are. Alex Garland makes some ridiculous climaxes, and this one is fantastic. But just like a climax, let's talk about that later. First, I want to talk about something I don't like: the flashes to the interview that take place after the adventure of the movie. This isn't quite a 2 weeks earlier kind of thing, but it kind of is.
You like that? You want me to cut to 3 weeks earlier when you were alive?
At one point during the interview, they say that Natalie Portman's character is the only one that returns from this expedition. Why are we spoiling that she gets away and all the other women don't? I feel like it takes away a lot from the movie. It takes away the stakes, practically guaranteeing her safety. And as we see during the movie, whatever this alien monster being is that's at the center of the shimmer can take human forms. So it's possible to deduce she might be the alien, I guess, or something that it formed. Anyway, that out of the way, let's talk about some good things about this movie. The contrast. This is something Alex Garland does very well. I'll talk about this a lot more during the men segment, but in this movie, the contrast in the altered environment and animals in the shimmer is done well. Very well. There's these plants that took the organic structure of human cells and grew in the form of humans. There's these crystal trees on the beach that tower over the people walking by them. But there's also this mega bear that uses the screams of its victims as a roar, and this The Last of Us type beat that makes my insides hurt when I look at it. What I'm saying is the creativity in the beauty and the beast of this movie is stunning. The fact that there can still exist beauty in an area that has this shit is amazing. Now, for the climax, goddamn. This entire sequence, once she walks into the hole, is insane. The being just appears, guarding the exit, and mimics the majority of her moves, meticulously picking the movements that either scare her or guard her. It's really just attacking because she's attacking. At the end, she doesn't even know if it wanted to attack her. The music is done so well. I've heard this song in TikToks. Where Would You Sleep the Hardest type beat, but it just works so well in this sequence. This climax was built up the entire movie and delivered. The first instance of morphed opposition was the giant gator, and that could be taken down by a gun. Then the second was the demon bear, once again, taken down by a gun. But then this being cannot be taken down by a gun, but I guess could be taken down by this special grenade. Maybe a little underwhelming that it just died, but I'm definitely satisfied with this climax. Ex Machina is Alex Garland's first directorial film, an A24 sci-fi thriller that toes the line into horror. The concept of AI is still a chilling concept, but in 2014, when this movie came out, it was so underdeveloped that this probably felt like something so far into the future that it was just considered sci-fi. But where we are in modern technology today, this doesn't even feel too far out. I watched this movie for the first time just this last week, and I'll say it, I think we could very well see this during my lifetime. This is a feeling I felt while watching Black Mirror just recently. It was the episode about AI shows that made me feel like it wasn't reaching too far into the future for its concepts anymore. So I probably had a completely different viewing experience as to someone who watched the movie when it was new. That being said, I feel like it's more a horror movie nowadays than it was considered back then. The first scene that gave me chilling horror vibes was about half an hour in. There were constant cuts in the power that allowed for Ava and Caleb to speak freely without the supervision of Nathan. And she spoke so ominously about how Nathan lies and he should be careful. Then about 45 minutes in, the real motive of Ava peeks its head as she shows interest in Caleb. And this conversation is so scary because it's so awkward and off-putting.
Are you attracted to me?
What?
Are you attracted to me? You give me indications that you are.
I do.
It makes you feel like the scenario Caleb is in is a lot more than he bargained for. As we see later in the movie, the goal of this whole test is to see how Ava can manipulate Caleb to use him as a means for escape, which she does ultimately fulfill. You see, this movie is more about the characters and the concept of AI evolving than anything else. Ex Machina is very far from the other movies Alex Garland has directed, but still has his signature. The climax is there, but feels a bit underwhelming when you put it side to side with something like Men or even Annihilation. Both of those movies feature a wild climax that utilizes things we have not seen yet in the film. Meanwhile, in Ex Machina, the climax only uses things we've already seen. For example, in Annihilation, the climax parades this being with all these crazy abilities. It's something we've been ramping up to for the entire movie, but it's a brand new concept. But in Ex Machina, the climax involves Ava killing Nathan and trapping Caleb. Seems underwhelming comparatively, but is almost as far as Ava could have possibly gone. And as far as the surreal A24-esque aspects go, Ex Machina is similar to Civil War in the aspect that the concept itself is surreal, so there aren't too many wild artsy scenes that have you pining for an explanation. Men is the most unique movie in Alex Garland's portfolio. This movie is jaw-droppingly unique. From the unforgettable climax to Rory Kinnear fulfilling nearly every male role in the movie, Men feels like a fever dream, and it just gets progressively weirder and weirder until the weirdest, most intense, scary, but kind of funny, but definitely disturbing climax, maybe ever. But before we talk about the climax, a word from our sponsor, the tunnel scene. This movie has two sequences that make me zone out the rest of the world and tune into just this movie. and one of them is found about 20 minutes into the movie. I could probably make a whole video on just this 10-minute sequence because it's magnificent. It feels like a hunter using every piece of the game they just secured. Garland juices every bit of resources out of the scene. The moment she leaves the house, everything is so beautiful. She has no reason to feel uncomfortable. Walking around the woods with these beautiful lush green trees, flowers in the grass, a slightly grayed sky on the cusp of a storm. Finally approaching this deep, dripping cave with light shining from the other side. Garland paints this picture so vividly. I feel like I can smell the dew on the grass, the trees, the nice fresh air. I am there. I'm teleported into the film. Then the echoing sounds into the tunnel. Not only am I visually stimulated by the surrounding beauty, now I'm auditorily stimulated, hearing echoes culminating into a song that's later utilized into the soundtrack of the movie. Like I said, using every piece of the buffalo like a hunter in a village in the 1600s. Then, just like that, we zoom into the other side of the tunnel and the camera focuses. We are not alone. A figure stands up, catching our attention. It makes a screech that doesn't sound human, or if it is human, it's a human I don't want to be around. As we're headed back, we hear the same sound as if it were a soundboard. Unfamiliar with the area, we find an alternative route home, passing this rough-looking nude man in the woods. Every moment is surreal and scary, just a terrifying sequence. She is all alone, now finding a reason to be on her guard. And now for the climax. We've been ramping up for a while. We encountered a string of strange characters, each more off-putting than the last. A church with strange etchings. Once we reach the final night, things start to be more surreal and nightmarish. Almost all forms of safety have been ripped away. Harper messages her friend the address so she can join her in a few hours, and on the other side is somehow the freaky mask guy she encountered earlier. Lights are now somehow a portal for this strange being to teleport around in. Harper's last layer of security is there, the owner of the house, and yet he too is somehow involved in this nightmare. However, all this turns into mush when the true climax starts to occur. The birthing and rebirthing of man into man. This is the strangest climax I've ever seen. This is the strangest scene I've ever seen. It's a never-ending conga line of birthed men. I can't even explain it any differently. I can't even show it on YouTube. You just have to take my word for it. But I'm sure that you have a very vivid picture in your head if you've seen it. And if you haven't seen it, damn, I gave a spoiler warning. Why are you here? Go watch the movie. Well, that's it for the movies we're talking about today. Contrast, climax, world building. Alex Garland has astounded me many times. Comment down below what's your favorite Alex Garland movie. And thanks for watching. Unsubscribe.